Have you ever wondered if history's greatest thinkers left out important details about the worlds they lived in? Marcus Aurelius, often hailed as the philosopher-emperor, gave us timeless wisdom in his meditations. He taught us about discipline, resilience, and finding peace within chaos. But what Marcus Aurelius didn't tell you might surprise you. Beneath his profound Stoic reflections lies a world of contradictions, a Rome that was chaotic, indulgent, and at times brutal. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is a personal journal, never intended for publication. It reveals his struggles to live virtuously while grappling with the immense responsibilities of ruling the Roman Empire. Yet, his writings often focus inward, offering little insight into the gritty realities of daily Roman life. Today, we're uncovering the parts of ancient Rome that Marcus Aurelius didn't tell you about, realities that clashed with his Stoic ideals and shaped the world he lived in. Let's start with the streets of Rome. If Marcus Aurelius's reflections evoke a sense of calm and order, the city streets were anything but. Ancient Rome was a bustling metropolis of over 1 million people, packed with merchants, vendors, beggars, and laborers. The narrow, winding streets were noisy, chaotic, and filled with the smells of markets, food stalls, and, unfortunately, open sewage. Fires frequently broke out, destroying entire neighborhoods, and crime was rampant. Pickpockets, thieves, and con artists thrived in this crowded environment, preying on the vulnerable. Marcus, from his position as emperor, likely had limited personal experience with these day-to-day struggles. His meditations encouraged composure and rationality, but surviving in the streets of Rome often required cunning and aggression. For the average Roman, practicing Stoicism wasn't about finding inner peace. It was about finding a way to make it through another day. The disparity between the rich and the poor was another reality Marcus didn't dwell on. While he reflected on the fleeting nature of wealth and the importance of living simply, the Roman elite lived lives of unimaginable luxury. Lavish feasts featured exotic dishes like flamingo tongues and honeyed dormice, and grand villas were adorned with marble, mosaics, and imported silks. Meanwhile, the poor lived in cramped, unsafe insulae, multi-story apartment buildings prone to collapse. These structures were poorly ventilated and overcrowded, offering little respite from the sweltering Roman summers. This divide wasn't just economic, it was cultural. The wealthy indulged in extravagance as a display of their status, while the poor struggled to survive on meager rations. Public grain distributions, or a nona, provided some relief, but they were often unreliable and didn't address the underlying inequality. Marcus Aurelius, despite his Stoic teachings on moderation, ruled a society that thrived on excess for the elite and left the lower classes to fend for themselves. Then there was the entertainment. Marcus Aurelius often criticized distractions and urged people to focus on higher pursuits. But the Roman populace was obsessed with spectacle. Gladiatorial games, chariot races, and theatrical performances were central to Roman culture, drawing massive crowds. The Colosseum, a marvel of Roman engineering, hosted bloody games where gladiators fought to the death and wild animals were slaughtered in elaborate displays. These events weren't just entertainment, they were a tool for social control, a way to distract the masses from their hardships and prevent unrest. Marcus Aurelius, despite his Stoic principles, couldn't ignore the importance of these spectacles. As emperor, he understood that the games served a purpose, even if they clashed with his personal values. His writings don't delve into the brutality of these events, but they were a defining feature of Roman life, one that often stood in direct opposition to Stoic ideals of compassion and rationality. Religion in Rome was another area Marcus largely overlooked in his meditations. Roman religion was deeply ritualistic and superstitious, focusing on appeasing the gods through ceremonies, sacrifices, and festivals. The Romans believed that divine favor was essential for the success of the state, and failing to perform the proper rituals could bring disaster. Marcus Aurelius, as a Stoic, likely saw these practices as unnecessary. Stoicism emphasized living in harmony with the natural order and accepting the rationality of the universe, rather than trying to manipulate it through rituals. Yet, as emperor, Marcus had to participate in these religious practices to maintain public favor and political stability. His meditations reveal little about this aspect of his life, but it's clear that he navigated a delicate balance between his philosophical beliefs and his duties as a ruler. The disconnect between Stoic rationality and Roman superstition was just another example of the contradictions that defined life in ancient Rome. Perhaps one of the most glaring omissions in Marcus Aurelius's writings is the role of slavery in Roman society. Slavery was the backbone of the Roman economy, with millions of enslaved people performing labor in households, fields, and mines. Stoicism taught that all humans shared the same rational nature and were equal in dignity, but this idea clashed with the widespread acceptance of slavery in Rome. Epictetus, a former slave and Stoic philosopher, embodied the possibility of finding freedom through philosophy, even in bondage. Yet, this perspective was rare. For most enslaved people, Stoicism offered little comfort in the face of their harsh realities. Marcus Aurelius, despite his philosophical wisdom, doesn't address the systemic injustices of slavery, reflecting the limitations of his perspective as an emperor. Even within families, Marcus Aurelius's meditations don't capture the complexities of Roman life. The paterfamilias, or male head of the household, wielded absolute authority over his family, including his wife, children, and slaves. While Marcus reflected on the importance of compassion and justice, the hierarchical structure of Roman families often prioritized control and obedience over mutual respect. Women, in particular, faced significant limitations in their rights and roles, despite the Stoic belief in the equality of all rational beings. The dynamics of family life in ancient Rome reveal yet another layer of complexity that Marcus Aurelius doesn't address in his meditations. Women, while respected in certain roles, were largely excluded from public life and decision-making. Their status depended heavily on their father or husband, and they had limited legal rights. Stoicism, which emphasized the equality of all rational beings, could have offered a progressive counterpoint to these norms. However, societal expectations and deeply ingrained traditions often overshadowed such philosophical ideals. Even Marcus Aurelius, despite his philosophical leanings, lived in a culture where these inequalities were normalized and rarely challenged. Another aspect of Roman life that Marcus Aurelius doesn't explore is the unrelenting competition and ambition that fueled the Roman political system. The Senate, the heart of Roman governance, was a battleground of power struggles, alliances, and betrayals. Senators jockeyed for influence, often resorting to bribery, manipulation, and even violence to achieve their goals. Stoicism taught that true power comes from mastering oneself, not from dominating others. Yet, in a society where political survival often depended on outmaneuvering rivals, Stoic virtues like honesty and humility were frequently ignored. Marcus Aurelius himself wasn't immune to these pressures. As emperor, he faced constant challenges to his authority, including conspiracies, rebellions, and external threats. His meditations reveal his efforts to remain calm and rational in the face of these challenges, but they don't delve into the darker realities of Roman politics. The decisions he had to make as a ruler, whether to go to war, suppress dissent, or navigate the complexities of succession, often stood in stark contrast to the Stoic ideal of focusing only on what one can control. The military campaigns of Marcus Aurelius further highlight the tension between his philosophy and his role as emperor. Much of his reign was spent on the front lines, leading armies against invading forces like the Germanic tribes. While his writings reflect on the importance of accepting one's fate and acting with courage, they don't fully address the brutality of war or the suffering it caused. Roman military victories often came at great human cost, with countless lives lost on both sides. The Stoic principles of compassion and rationality were difficult to reconcile with the harsh realities of maintaining an empire through force. Public entertainment in Rome presents another stark contrast to Stoic ideals. Marcus Aurelius's meditations emphasize the importance of focusing on meaningful pursuits and avoiding distractions. Yet the Roman populace was captivated by the violent spectacles of the Colosseum and other arenas. Gladiatorial games, chariot races, and animal hunts were not just forms of entertainment. They were symbols of Rome's power and grandeur. These events, which often glorified violence and excess, stood in direct opposition to the Stoic emphasis on moderation and virtue. While Marcus Aurelius likely viewed these spectacles as a necessary means of keeping the masses content, his writings don't address the moral implications of such practices. Religion, too, offers a glimpse into the contradictions of Roman life. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic beliefs emphasized living in harmony with nature and accepting the natural order of the universe. However, Roman religion was deeply ritualistic and focused on appeasing the gods through ceremonies, sacrifices, and festivals. As emperor, Marcus participated in these public rituals to maintain political stability and the favor of the people, but his personal reflections rarely mention them. This silence highlights the gap between his philosophical beliefs and the expectations placed on him as a ruler. Perhaps the most profound example of this gap lies in the institution of slavery. Stoicism taught that all humans share the same rational nature and are therefore equal in dignity, yet slavery was an integral part of Roman society. Enslaved people were treated as property, denied basic rights, and subjected to harsh conditions, while Stoic philosophers like Epictetus, who was himself a former slave, embodied the possibility of finding inner freedom through philosophy. Their teachings did little to challenge the systemic injustice of slavery. Marcus Aurelius, despite his Stoic principles, ruled an empire that relied on the labor of millions of enslaved individuals. His meditations offer no critique of this practice, reflecting the limitations of his perspective as a member of the elite. Even within his own family, Marcus Aurelius faced challenges that tested his Stoic resolve. His decision to name his son Commodus as his successor has been widely criticized, as Commodus's reign marked the beginning of Rome's decline. While Marcus likely hoped that his son would continue his legacy, Commodus's actions as emperor, marked by cruelty, excess, and mismanagement, stood in stark contrast to the values Marcus held dear. This decision highlights the difficulty of applying Stoic principles in the complex realities of leadership and family dynamics. So, why does Marcus Aurelius's meditations leave out so much of the darker, messier aspects of Roman life? The answer lies in the purpose of the work itself. Meditations wasn't written as a historical account or a guide to Roman society. It was a deeply personal journal, a way for Marcus to remind himself of the principles he aspired to live by. Its focus is inward, reflecting his struggles to remain virtuous and composed in the face of external chaos. As a result, it offers little insight into the broader social, political, and cultural realities of ancient Rome. But this omission doesn't diminish the value of Marcus's writings. On the contrary, it highlights the enduring relevance of Stoicism as a personal philosophy. His reflections remind us that while we can't control the world around us, we can control how we respond to it. This lesson is as powerful today as it was in Marcus's time, offering a path to resilience and clarity in an often unpredictable world. At the same time, understanding what Marcus Aurelius didn't tell us about ancient Rome provides a more complete picture of the world he lived in. It reveals the challenges of practicing Stoicism in a society that often betrayed its ideals and reminds us that even the greatest philosophers were products of their time. By exploring these contradictions, we can better appreciate the complexities of Stoicism and its relevance to our own lives. The gaps in Marcus Aurelius's meditations tell us as much about ancient Rome as his words themselves. They show us that even the most enlightened thinkers couldn't fully escape the contradictions and challenges of their society. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about the bustling, chaotic streets of Rome, the inequalities between the elite and the poor, or the brutality of slavery, because his focus was on how to rise above these realities, not to document them. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't explore these realities. Understanding the world Marcus lived in helps us put his teachings into context. It reminds us that philosophy isn't practiced in a vacuum. It's tested and shaped by the pressures of the real world. And in many ways, Marcus's ability to hold on to his Stoic values, even in the face of overwhelming challenges, makes his reflections all the more powerful. The truth is, Marcus Aurelius was not a perfect Stoic. He was an emperor, a military leader, a father, and a man navigating one of the most turbulent periods in Roman history. He made decisions that sometimes contradicted his principles, and his empire was far from an ideal reflection of Stoic teachings. But that's what makes him relatable. His struggles remind us that Stoicism isn't about achieving perfection. It's about striving to live virtuously in an imperfect world. Today, we face many of the same challenges Marcus Aurelius did. Our world, like ancient Rome, is filled with distractions, inequalities, and pressures to conform. We may not live in sprawling insulae or watch gladiatorial games in the Colosseum, but we have our own versions of these realities: constant digital noise, social hierarchies, and an unrelenting demand for success and status. And just as Marcus Aurelius turned to Stoicism to find clarity and resilience, we can do the same. So what can we take from this exploration of what Marcus Aurelius didn't tell us about ancient Rome? First, we can appreciate the timeless relevance of his teachings. His meditations remind us that while we can't control the world around us, we can always control how we respond to it. Second, we can learn from the contradictions of Roman society and strive to align our own actions with our values, even when the world makes it difficult. And finally, we can take comfort in the fact that even the greatest minds in history faced challenges and contradictions. They were human, just like us. If this journey into the untold realities of ancient Rome has sparked your curiosity, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from these insights. And don't forget to subscribe for more explorations of ancient wisdom, history, and how timeless philosophies can help us navigate modern life. Together, we can learn from the past, embrace the present, and build a more thoughtful and intentional future. Remember, Marcus Aurelius' wisdom wasn't about escaping the world. It was about finding peace and virtue within it. And that's a lesson we can all carry forward, no matter what challenges we face.